Hello, precious friends. It's a blessed Sunday. And again, I would like to say we thank God for the grace and for the wonderful opportunity to share in His words. And as we were told, and as we know, His word is life and health unto all those who succeed to find the word. Those who have been following us, you remember that we have been talking on intercession. And last week, I began a subset of our talk about how having knowledge makes our intercession efficient. We're going to continue with the second part of having knowledge. And today, the title is Understanding the Need and Willingness to Put on the Whole Armor of God and as part of knowledge. And for that, I'm going to read from the book of Second Corinthians, chapter 10, verse 3 to 6. And this is the Apostle Paul addressing the Corinthians. Verse 3 says, "For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. And the weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish every argument and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ." Excuse me. "And we will be ready to punish every act of disobedience once your disobedience is complete." I would like to emphasize the first part of this passage that I read. The Apostle Paul, in the first place, is acknowledging that we are in the flesh, we are here in this physical world. Obviously, we'll do what the physical world does need. We eat, we drink, but we do not fight as the people of the world will do battle. And the reason is that the world will do things according to its perspective. It's going to be wickedness. It's going to be separation. It's going to be everything that is worldly. Now, they may believe that they are getting some result. That's part of the problem. But the reality is that we know that the battle is not in the flesh and in the blood. We know that the battle is a spiritual battle. And therefore, you confront spiritual battle with spiritual weapons. And that's the key aspect of this passage that we are reading now. What I have just read is an extremely important aspect of the intercessor's ministry. You know, sometimes a person's zeal may get the better part of them. You know, maybe there's a problem within the church. There is a very strong tendency because you think, well, there's just sin here. We got to crush it down. We got to just disband things. At the end of the day, we don't solve the problem and we are left with more problems. And the reason that this happens is that if we do not apply knowledge to what is truly happening in our intercession as intercessors, our flesh will get the upper hand in us. The Apostle Paul made it so clear that the flesh is contrary to the spirit. The flesh is constantly battling against the things of the spirit. And if you yield to the flesh, then obviously you cannot fulfill the desires of the spirit. Understanding the need that our battle is not against flesh and blood should be a proper motivation for an intercessor to put on the whole armor. It's like this. If you understand that your battle is not about flesh and blood, it's not about people, it's not about the people who are not doing your will, it's not even about those people who probably are constantly falling and not doing what you think is righteous. if you understand that it is a spiritual thing, obviously you realize I cannot fight this battle in the flesh, and therefore I have to put on the right armor for this battle. And the right armor is spiritual. Intercessors fail when they approach their ministry with common sense. That's the tendency. You always think, well, the pastor should have done this, the man should have done that, the woman should have done this. Rather, if you have knowledge and discernment, you realize that what happens sometimes is beyond just having common sense, because there's something always in the back of the thing that is happening, and it helps me to align my heart with the heart of God and His Spirit, of course, in intercession. Knowledge and discernment tell us to slow down and figure out what is really going on and how to intercede, rather than be led by the emotions that are raging around us. One of the things the flesh does is that it allows our reaction to be in the flesh. It causes us to rage rather than apply wisdom and discernment. Churches, communities, and nations have lost, because for the intercessor to apply into their knowledge and discernment, they have applied emotion going on around them, and thereby they have failed to stand in the gap properly and effectively. A lot of battles have been lost, not because God did not want to answer. The reason is that the intercessors have gotten themselves so entangled with the emotions of the flesh, and that's what the emotions of the flesh does. It entangles, it hinders, it restricts, it keeps you motionless, and then you become very inefficient. And that's why from the passage we read, the apostle said, although we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. How does the world wage war? The world wage war based upon raging emotions of the flesh. The world wage war based upon what they consider common sense. And we understand that there is always something beyond what we call common sense. Intercessors forget that our battle is not against flesh and blood, and therefore our weapon of warfare cannot be carnal. If we do not forget, if we remind ourselves that the weapons of our battle cannot be carnal, especially because the battle we are fighting is a spiritual one. And this is one thing that I would like to truly emphasize here, that the evil one understands this. He understands that when he throws that bait out of raging emotions, those emotions of the flesh, they will entangle us. And so he will throw it out. And then the individual who is not aware of the need to apply knowledge and discernment becomes entangled. What the enemy succeeds to do is that he succeeds to sow discord in the churches, in the community, in the intercession for the nations. He knows that those who do not have understanding that the battle is not the fellow human being or somebody who is from a different race or the fellow Christian or a particular political party, then what automatically happens is this: hate and frustration and anger and slander will rise up in our hearts. And sometimes the devil succeeds to provoke disunity because he has infected us with the raging emotions of the flesh. And when this happens, it is obvious that the intercessor is not applying the weapon of knowledge, of discernment, and understanding. In the matters of the affairs of a nation or people, the intercessor cannot afford to go into the battle for the nation using the weapons of politics. Since men or man has existed, politics have not solved the problem of the affairs of the nation. Of course, they are tools for the world, but the best way to approach it is through intercession and using understanding and knowledge. One thing that is important is this: the saint must not forget that behind everything that is happening in the physical world, there is a spiritual activity that has taken place or already taken place. There are principalities and power jostling in the affairs of nation. Any entanglement with carnal weapons is a gross disservice to the nation and to the intercessor himself. Things are first spiritual before they manifest physically. When an intercessor applies carnal weapons, he becomes entangled by frustration, by anger, by hate, by blindness to the reality and the intention of the evil one over the nation or the people that he or she is called to stand in the gap for. Sometimes the evil one infects the ignorant heart of the intercessor with pride. You think you know what you need to do rather than wait for the leading of the Spirit. And that makes the intercessor fall into the trap of carnal weapons. He or she cannot start in the Spirit and then resort to the flesh. Hear what the Apostle Paul tells the Galatians. In chapter 3, verses 1 to 6, he said, "You foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? Before your very eyes, Jesus was crucified. He was clearly portrayed as crucified. I would like to learn just one thing from you. Did you receive the Spirit by the works of the law or by believing what you had? Are you so foolish? At the beginning, by the means of the Spirit, are you now trying to finish by the means of the flesh?" It is important that we understand this. Although the temptation is very high when you look at what is going on around us, to resort to the flesh is foolishness. Knowledge and discernment should tell the individual, stay the course of your battle in the Spirit and put on your whole armor. Do not deviate. The flesh only leads to death. It does not profit for anything. Hear this. In Galatians chapter 6, verses 7 to 8, it says, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whosoever sows to please the flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. And whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life." Dear friends, in conclusion, for this part 2 of knowledge in intercession, I would like to say sometimes we are tempted by what we term a holy anger. Whatever name we choose to call it, sowing into the flesh will always lead to destruction. It is an entanglement to the efficiency of the intercessor. An intercessor must arm himself or herself with knowledge and discernment. May the Lord bless you as you mull these words in Jesus' name.